and I ended up as #1. Like I just played.
Number one,
but
what?
I #1 ranked player on the MetaZoo Play network.
Number one
Even going through.
player. Hey, you're working for MetaZoo. Like, wait, what?
Last thing I want is someone to be like, you don't have a plant, sir.
Well, like, dude, what do they even have you doing nowadays?
We called it Lady Luck because it always made it there.
Let's say it popped up again. If I got a Torrential Tides Bucks that had some errors and I contacted you in the Discord, what would be your response? Is there anything you could say about the 4th set?
Not a terrible pack, right?
You remember whenever they was talking about the vending machines?
Well, so interestingly, there is one.
I really appreciate your honesty on that, man. I know that was, pressing a little bit. Do you have any idea, like, how far ahead you guys are right now? Are you able to speak on that?
The red box, stuff like that.
The red box.
I really think that the red box, but I do have, I can show you.
Guys, welcome back to the 2nd episode of the Cryptid Cast. Today we have Ben MetaZoo. He is not only an OG collector, not only an OG player competitively, but he's worked his way up to being a MetaZoo social media manager and then some. I guess that's safe to say, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. First of all, congratulations on that, brother.
Thank you.
Also,
it's really been an experience so far.
Absolutely, dude. To start out with, like, dude, what do they even have you doing nowadays?
I mean, a lot, but like, in the best ways, right? So like the most forward-facing thing is the social media, so I'm taking care of all the Instagram, anything we put on the YouTube or any of our other website stuff, like uploading the lore and stuff. But then on the other end, I'm involved in some of the product direction, some of the lore direction. Really, it's a small team, so everyone kind of works together, all hands on deck on any project that we're doing. It's been a crazy ride, but an awesome experience.
So to start out with, I'm going to get this popping. I'm not even going to lie, bro.
Yeah.
Yokai is right around the corner. Do you have any updates to give the community on Yokai?
In terms of delivery date, no, but I can say, we've completed the full internal production of it. So we've designed all the cards, it's been tested, all the art's done and framed, and everything's ready to be hollowed and textured and look really cool. But we have to run print tests and a whole bunch of other tests before we print anything. So we're in that process right now. Once all those print tests go through, we'll have a much more clear time frame on delivery date for that.
Do you think that Yokai is going to be distributed through like big box, or do you think people like the Whatnot streamers is going to get that, or do you have any idea?
I don't have any specific insight on how the stuff gets distributed, honestly.
Gotcha.
The publisher GQL does all that, all the distribution and where everything goes. I work for the M2 side, so we're a lot more involved in the IP direction and the characters and everything, but not necessarily the physical product as much.
Okay. So would you even know like how many steps goes in from drawing the card to actually getting a physical product out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot, right? It sounds like it would be a simple thing. And I've worked on smaller trading card games in the past with much simpler processes. But at the top level, it goes from art to, it has to be framed in text and iconed and make sure, it goes from art to a card. And then from there, depending on its rarity, you have to figure out the hollow treatments that it's going to get, whether it's going to be a textured card or, something with UV. Or just a base hollow. And even in that, there's a shifting scale of black to white that you use on a separate layer to make a card hollow. So anything that you don't want to be holographic, has some shade of black over it on that layer that you send them. So, there's multiple files for every card that goes to the printer. It's not just like we put the frame on it, we send it to you, and now you print it. And then you have all of the tests after that to make sure that it looks right, that it prints in the right colors, that the texture is how you want it to be, and the hollow patterns are how you want them to be, working with the art that you've made. And then you have packaging, and then you have distribution. Yeah. So there's a lot.
It sounds like there really is a lot of steps. Whenever it comes to like test prints, do they have like any cool test print cards? Like whenever, is there like any sample sheets or?
There are, yeah. So everything that we have made has some sort of test print, right? Like I said, like we can't print anything until we've tested it and made sure that it looks the way we want it to look.
Yeah.
So there are some really cool uncut sheets for not only the base sets and core cards, but I've seen some cool ones like the convention sketch sheets that are only like 4 cards wide with all of the cool like rainbow crow and everything across it. All of the convention promos, I thought that was cool. I saw the test sheet for that, and back then there were different colors on some of them. So like the ones that we have seen now even got changed from that test print. And that just kind of goes to show the variance that can happen in these print tests. You print something in Lightning and you look at it and you're like, this card doesn't really look like a Lightning card. Let's shift
Yeah.
it on the next print.
Yeah. So how is the sketch cards printed? Is all the normal sketch cards that you could pull from the packs and the redeemable sketch cards all printed on the same sheet, or is that individual? Or
I believe it's individual sheets. So there's like one sheet that has all of the non-hollow full arts, and then one sheet that has the redeemable full arts, one sheet that has the redeemable sketches, and then one sheet that has the redeemed sketches.
so now that 2025 is over, is the 2025 convention packs like kind of dunzos, or
It kind of depends, right? Because we have some cool plans that we're looking at around those, right? One of the things that we really want to do is more redeemables, maybe phasing out the cards that you could redeem for and putting in a new set, just so that the people who didn't get a chance to experience that product last year can experience it this year, but with new rewards. And then people who did experience it last year, and maybe they have some extra sets that they couldn't make it out to one of the shows, they make it out to one of the shows this year, and there's a new redeemable for them. And we could even go higher than that, right? So there's some pretty cool redeemable possibilities that we're exploring right now as we venture into the world of promos.
I think people are gonna like hearing that. One thing that I heard some people saying was that they really wanted like a sketch Loveland Frogman. That'd be
Yeah,
super cool to see. And
yeah, I agree.
like a Grim Reaper and things like that.
Yeah, well, that's something that's cool about printing the sketch cards now for the next series, is that we do have 2 more sets that we can explore, and we can look into people's favorite arts or some of the arts that we think would look great as sketches, and we can explore those for the next series of redeemables.
Are you able to speak on any of the redeemables that we could expect, or you saving that?
Yeah, I won't give you specifics, but there will be some from Tides and Secret Shadows.
So I've talked about the lenticular cards and the glow in the dark cards. Do you have any idea of what our printers are capable of?
Not necessarily, no. I can't say about like their maximum capabilities, but I know that they've been capable of doing some really cool stuff for us, right? We've had all kinds of different treatments, we've had all kinds of different hollows. We've really been exploring what they are capable of. I know I've heard a couple people talk about lenticular, and we were at Card Party in Seattle. MetaZoo was back in December, maybe. But it was a really cool experience because we all found there was I forget what brand it was, but there was like a trade wall of cards, and they were lenticular, and all of us were kind of like moving the thing around like this would be really cool.
Yeah,
So I do, I see the allure in it, and I do think that it's something that we could look into. But yeah, I don't personally know the full capacity of what the printers that we work with are able to do. But I do think, if it's a product that people really want, it doesn't necessarily have to be a trading card product. So if there could be like a collectible series of MetaZoo cards that are lenticular, like a top set, right? That we could explore if that's something that people really want.
I think it'd be cool. Like I was saying in the last podcast that I did, I think it'd be maybe an alternative to making scenes. If you guys aren't able to make like a animated series or whatever you want to call it, maybe lenticular
Yeah,
cards would kind of be a way of doing that.
I think that'd be really cool. Imagine, a binder full of cards, but they tell a story as they go throughout the cards. I think that'd be great.
Kind of like the pages of a comic book. Oh, come on, dude.
Yeah, wouldn't that
That'd
be
be
cool?
nuts. That would be nuts.
That'd be sweet.
Um, what else we got here? Talking a little bit about your background. You want to give us a little touch on your background, like as much personal as you want to, or definitely when you started collecting and how much you've been playing and things like that.
Right. Yeah. So, interestingly, MetaZoo, I call it my first TCG. As a kid, I collected, I wouldn't even say I collected. I had Pokemon, I had Yu-Gi-Oh. They were just like toys at that point. I didn't see the value in them. I didn't see anything that held me to them.
Yeah.
But then I joined the Navy as an adult. And I was on a ship, and there's a lot of time you spend playing games on the ship, especially when you're at sea. You know, there's no cell phone service, it's dark, everyone is up at weird hours. But the one place that people commonly met was our mess decks where we eat and where there was a TV at the time. And a lot of people would be playing card games or board games. So there was like a group that played Yu-Gi-Oh for a while, so I played Yu-Gi-Oh a little bit. But then there was a group that played Keyforge, which Keyforge was like this really cool game where every deck was different and you just would grab a deck and play. And, you know, we had like 9 or 10 guys and we'd have like little tournaments and everything. And I really liked Keyforge. So when I got out of the Navy, I wanted to find something that made me feel like I felt when I played Keyforge on the ship, right? I understood that there was like a camaraderie that could be built through playing card games in the same way that, like, you know, going out and playing like a rec league basketball
Yeah.
type deal would work.
Yeah.
But right, and getting out of the military, it was really hard to, like, not necessarily find friends, but I had been so used to my friends being always around, and then, you know, to just being not. I moved back home and I was in college and I lived with my girlfriend, and I just wanted to do something more. So I was watching a YouTube video, and it like auto played into a Meta Bros video, and Meta Bros were, it was Moldy Potions and his brother, and they just made like gameplay videos and they were fun to watch. I had no idea what MetaZoo was. But you know, it looked like it played like Magic, and I at some point had like learned Magic, and I understood how Magic had played, and I played Hearthstone on my computer, and I think I might have played Magic Arena if it was out at the time. So like, I played a lot of like online card games, and I was like, dang, this MetaZoo looks neat. And at the end of it, they talked about how there was a big tournament coming up, like the Frogman Festival in Ohio. And I
Yeah.
was like, I live in Ohio, like, and they're like $50,000, and I was like, wow, that would be crazy. And I remember I was like watching the video, doing homework, and I looked at my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and I was like, hey, should I learn how to play this game so I can go compete for $50,000? And she said, no, you should do your homework. Um, and I was like, all right, well, I'm definitely going to do it now. So I had like, collected, like, I started buying like Yu-Gi-Oh slabs. I didn't really know much about graded cards, and the only cards I was like super like somewhat more familiar with was Yu-Gi-Oh. So I would buy like low grade old cards that I thought were cool that I remembered from like the show. And I just had like this stupid stack of useless Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And I was like, all right, how do I turn this into MetaZoo cards? And there was nowhere around me that had MetaZoo. So I went on Facebook Marketplace, and there was one guy who was selling a box of CN2, and he was like 2.5 hours from me. So I messaged him and I was like, can I trade you a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh slabs for that box?
Oh my.
And he said, yeah. He told me he was like a streamer, so like he would get more value out of auctioning the slabs. And I was like so out of the TCG space. Like, I think he said he was a Whatnot streamer, and I had no idea what Whatnot it like was. And remember, at the time, this is January of 2023, so I'm already
Yeah.
late to the game on the zoo. So I drive out to this guy's house in the middle of nowhere, like no cell phone service. Trade him all the slabs for the box, and then I build a deck out of the box. And I found a locals to go to so that I could qualify for this Frogman Festival. And I went to that locals with like the most horribly put together Fearsome Critters deck, and I just got demolished by some of like the best players in MetaZoo at the time. Like the first guy that I played against was a guy who went by the name of Doom, which was like already like, you know, I'm sitting down at the table and he's like, hi, I'm Doom. I'm like, this is gonna be great.
Okay.
And he right,
With a name
and
like
I
that.
right, and you know, I had like started to understand like the quirks of MetaZoo, right? Like you needed to have a plant for the card growth. And I didn't know how serious it was, right? So I brought like all of the physical things needed, and everyone's kind of like looking at me because you could just write it down, like you didn't actually have to bring them. But I was that new guy.
That's how it would have been.
But right, I just wanted to
Seriously.
make sure, you know. Last thing I want is someone being like, "You don't have a plant, sir." So yeah, I play against Doom, and Doom is playing this Santa Claus light deck, and it's a crazy deck. Like he won so many tournaments with this deck, but it was like the Santa card was like, if you have given someone a present this year, you don't have to do something or something like that, right? So he had like physically made up little presents that he would give you, and then he had his like Doom Santa's list that he would put your name on it because it was January, and throughout like that whole year, he just kept putting people's names on the list that he would give gifts, so that, you know, if there had been an eventual Casters Cup, like a lot of people would have been
He was
on his
ready.
list. He was
He was
ready.
ready. So whenever you say like a little gift, what are you talking about? Like
Like,
just
I'm
like a
pretty sure they
little
were like
box
little
or
like they were like little papers folded up into present shapes that were like
creative?
hand done. Yeah, exactly. And that's what MetaZoo was. You know, some of the most creative things I saw were the fourth wall items that people would bring to tournaments and stuff.
Uh, I believe Doom actually does kind of like his own version of the cryptid cams, where he takes pictures with the actual old cameras. It's got the white border and gets them doodled and stuff, dude. That's super cool.
That's like one of my favorite things. That's what he would bring, like a couple different Polaroid cameras to all the conventions last year, and he would get pictures of the staff and the artists and whoever, and then the artist who was at the event would do the drawings. I thought that was really cool.
Speaking of the events, how many events would you say you attended last year?
Oh man, double digits. I did every show but the last two, I think. We did Collecticons, we did Legends Expo. Yeah, we did a lot. It was fun. And I drove the we had like a van with all the stuff in it. So I
Yeah.
got to like MetaZoo hits the road. Yeah, and you know, it was fun. The fun part for me was like the guy who was in charge of the shows, Jim at Pokemon. He like gave me a box and he was like, you know, if you see a kid or you see somebody who's like interested, like give him packs. And that was like the most fun thing to me because I was always like in my MetaZoo hoodie, getting out of this big van, and I would just like stuff. Anytime I go into like a gas station, I'd put a bunch of packs in my pocket, and I would just like
That's
wait for
cool.
somebody to be like, "What's MetaZoo?" And I'd be like, "Here you go."
Check it out.
Um, right, and that was like a super fun experience. Also, like, you know, being behind the scenes of a big show like Collecticon as many times as I got to be was really cool. Um, yeah, it was just a really cool year, really cool experience.
So was it the Hits the Road van?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that old. The old van. We got a new van. Luckily, I don't know if that old van would get me on the road, but the new one got me on the road.
Is it like a mail truck or just like a Amazon van or
It's like like a Dodge 3500. It's like similar to an Amazon van, but it
get
was nice. Had
get her
Bluetooth.
done? Get
Yeah,
her done.
exactly.
Would you say you've made some friends through MetaZoo?
Yeah, yeah. I think that at this point in my life, the people that I would call my lifelong friends, like if I were to have to pick to have, you know, five people by my side, would all be people that I met through MetaZoo. You know, Doom, who I told you about, is now one of my best friends. Talk to him every single day. We've been in the ups and downs of MetaZoo together since that day. Realistically, um, he also like was a big part of getting back into MetaZoo with me. Like him and I tried a couple different games just so we could like stay in touch. Like we tried playing Star Wars together, we tried playing Lorcana together, we tried to do everything just to like keep that magic alive. But you know, nothing felt like MetaZoo. So when we heard MetaZoo was coming back, it was like all hands on deck. All the boys were back together. We
Right.
rolled into the convention, and that was like such a magical day. You know, him and I had made the tabletop simulator mod for the new MetaZoo. As soon as they put a card database online, we made it with no rules, and we just played. We just played like how we thought it should be played, even though like we were way wrong. But it was just like, you know, it felt like that magic again, where it's like we have no idea what we're doing, but we're having so much fun. And then we went to Miami, and both of us won poncho boxes on the spin wheel, and it was like, this is cool.
He said this is cool. There was a lot of people that spun that wheel.
Yeah, you know, I when I won it, I was first in line. I literally it was like the stars aligned for MetaZoo for me. It was like this is how I knew I was home, right? I was first in line, first spin, and I won the poncho box. And I went kind of like I went crazy. You know, they like tried to interview me, like they handed me this little mic, and you know, I know it's supposed to be like over here, but I got it like right up here.
He
And I'm like,
said,
magic is real, believe in yourself. Like it's back, baby. And I expected it to roll on the Instagram, you know, because they had been showing everyone else, and then they rolled the video of like the little girl getting it, and I was like, dang, they didn't want me because I was probably like real sweaty too. I was getting emotional. Yeah.
I actually was there too, dude. And as soon as I got my
Yeah.
box, I ripped it. It
Opened it.
it
Yep.
it, it was not in my hands literally maybe 20 seconds, and I was like, for the content,
That's so sick. Right? No, I
for the
get it.
hobby, for the
First one.
content, for the community.
Yeah, dude.
I
I
love
was
it,
stoked.
man.
We took it back to my it was my dad went with me, which I thought was really cool. My dad got back into my dad would like I got him into the old MetaZoo. And that was like a fun experience for us. Like when we opened Native together for the first time because that was my first official like new set release for MetaZoo was Native. And my dad loved Piazza Bird, and we pulled the Native Piazza Bird out of like our Rudy kits that we got. And that like was a really cool experience because it was like my dad and me were sharing a cool hobby, like as an adult, you know. And then we opened the top set, and he hit like an out of 25 Piazza or something,
That's
and it was
crazy.
like this is right. So when I told him the new MetaZoo was coming back, he was like, "Can I go with you?" And we went together, and it was so, dude, it was so cool.
Yeah, MetaZoo. Me and my dad, we loved collecting cards too, man. We collected, and I ripped so much with him.
Yeah,
Whenever he found out about MetaZoo, he's like, oh, "Okay, this is my
yeah,
stuff." He loves the cryptids. He always watches like the History
yeah,
Channel
dude.
and stuff.
Same, dude. My dad always like my dad's more into like the space and aliens and stuff. So like
Mm-hmm.
the first set that me and him like really opened together was UFO. Like he bought like UFO boxes on eBay and stuff. We ripped him, and he was like really into Project Bluebeam. And then there's a lot of like the aliens
Yep.
from that series in there, and yeah, there's a lot of like cool connections for people who like that kind of stuff.
Can you remember what you guys paid for the UFO box right off the top?
I want to say $50.
I
I want to say
remember
we
them
paid
days.
80 for Wilderness, 50 for UFO.
I remember.
The
I
one thing
remember them days.
I do you remember like what was the most boxes you ever ripped? Like back when boxes were still expensive.
I've I've never really been like too much of a ripper. The most boxes I've ripped is literally through my live streams.
Yeah.
Really, dude.
Dang.
I've always been a single buyer. I buy the singles of the cards I really enjoy.
You're a smart man. You're a smart
Hmm.
man. I at one point, I don't know if you remember, there was Caster Coin because the MetaZoo Play Network had a ranking system, right? So it was like every time you played in an event, you would get 5 Caster Coin just for playing. And then if you
Hmm.
won an event, you would get 25. And then that Caster Coin was like a 1-to-1 for dollars on the MetaZoo shop. So in 2023, all I did was play MetaZoo. Like I played like 180 something sanctioned matches throughout the year. I played in every tower, every metal event that I could drive to within like a 4 hour radius. Like I played MetaZoo, and I ended up as number one. Like I just played.
Number one,
But
what?
I number one ranked player on the MetaZoo Play Network.
Number one
Even going
ranked
through
player on the.
whatever,
Oh
Well,
my! You
I
just say
was,
that so
dude.
nonchalant.
Well, there's like one thing
Humble.
that irks me, which is they had a Cryptid Clash tournament on, like, as MetaZoo was shutting down. They were like, Cryptid Clash tournament, and you could win a Kickstarter booster box. And I was
Yeah,
like, that sounds fun, right? I'm in number one. I didn't care. Cryptid Clash was fun. I'd gotten to the highest rank in Cryptid Clash. I put like stupid hours into Cryptid Clash, uh, and then I just lost in this tournament. I did so bad in this online tournament, and it was like best of one. And I was like, whatever. But it like took me from first to 10th on the global rankings. I'm like, how did that count?
that's
Like,
crazy.
because for a long time there were like almost like a syndicate of different like groups that would have online tournaments on
Hmm.
TTS every week.
I
Like
do
I
remember
was
that
playing
a
like
little bit.
yeah, dude, like 2 or 3 nights a week I was playing in like Dr. Cards tournaments, or like the Team Mishi tournaments, like stuff like that. We even hosted tournaments like the Smoke Squad and stuff. um but I was so used to playing in those events, but they had never counted. It was never a thing that MetaZoo would let count, because we had like some big online tournaments. Like there was a like an online forest tower because they didn't have the physical forest tower, and there were enough people to make it qualify for medals. So like I still got a medal for playing in that, but it didn't
Cool.
like count as an official event. But I think they just didn't want people to like abuse having online tournaments to get those physical trophies. But
Hmm.
it also like negated people from having physical tournaments because there just wasn't enough people to gather. Like I was pretty fortunate that there were a lot of play groups around me, so I could drive like 4 or 5 hours in any direction, and I could hit like a medal event every weekend, which was cool. So I got like a lot of those medals.
Oh, Ohio is popping for the zoo, isn't it?
It was, I think at the end we had the biggest play group. Like we had a metal event every month in Ohio, like at my store. And it was always a big thing. And then there was a store like in Southern Ohio that we would like, people from down there would come up for our metal events, and then we go down there for their metal events. And we had some of like the best players, like according to like the global rankings, and even like some like the tower placements. Like there were like 4 or 5 guys at my shop that all top cutted at a tower. We had like one of the best players to ever play MetaZoo was a guy named Ben Ritt. I think he got like fourth at Casters Cup or one of the big tournaments. But he was somebody who I even like now, like if he told me something about the new game, I'd be like, you're probably right, because he was just a genius at
Yep.
MetaZoo. It was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people, they're just talented with things. Like I'm kind of
Yeah, man.
talented with video games. If I'm willing to put in the time, I get pretty good at it pretty quick. And I'd say
Yeah,
he
you were
was.
telling me you got like pretty good in Fortnite, right?
Yeah, I've been playing Fortnite since like really whenever it came out, and like season one way back, and just over time, I've gotten Unreal multiple times. I competed in the World Cup and got a little bit of earnings, nothing crazy, but
It's pretty cool.
yeah,
It's pretty.
the kids nowadays, they're insane, and there's a lot of cheaters, so
Yeah.
I don't really take that
It's
stuff too serious anymore.
That's cheating in game. Even in the old MetaZoo, there were a lot of cheaters. There were a lot of cheaters. There were a lot of rule sharks. There were, the rules were so complex and so unbalanced that you could take advantage of them, and people did. Like if there was an errata on a card that you knew and your opponent did it, like you were already at an advantage. But you were just like the nerd who read all the rule books, and I was the nerd that made a video update every time there was a change to the rule book. Like I get it. But that's something that I like so much about the new MetaZoo is that you can't cheat because there is no randomness to it. It's just strategic plays with actions and consequences. It's really cool.
Yeah, as far as that goes, right, with like the crazy rules, like people questioning that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I can't wait until like there's an online client made. I know that's
yeah,
probably a lot for a company to put together and keep up with.
yeah. Well, like realistically, I've thought about this, right? Like the companies that have polished like TCG online games are big IPs. Big IPs are big studios, right?
Hmm.
And there's just so much money that goes into it. I'm not saying that it's like it wouldn't be a good thing to spend money on, but we really are still in our inception and we really want people to play the physical game. We're trying to incentivize as much as we can now these awesome events that we're doing and the cool cards and stuff that we're going to have for people to win, and really get back into get the gathering of it, right? I think mobile clients and all that stuff are really cool, but they do kind of deter from the gathering action of it. They're really good for testing and online stuff, but I think that right now we just really need to get everybody back together, get everybody to these fun events, playing and doing things that feel magic, and bringing like the life back to MetaZoo.
I agree 100%. Um, although having the client and like hovering over a card and it giving you like highlighted cards actions as to what you can do with it and things like that, it definitely would encourage some other people. So I look forward to that for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. I think that's like a really cool goal to have. I would love that. I'm somebody who, would play so many hours. I Cryptid Clash, dude. Cryptid Clash it was something, but I put so many hours into it because it had a ranking system. I could be competitive to it, but it also had a limited card pool. So you had to play decks that weren't the current meta. You had to figure out what was the meta of that version. And I think that's something that's really cool about online games is that it like allows you to have the ability to have like a smaller scale thing. Even like I assume that I don't play Pokemon, but like the Pokemon Pocket game has like its own version of the card game that I've heard is different than the physical card game, and I think that's cool. So I think that something like that for MetaZoo would be super cool. And it's just yeah, I assume it's just a really big undertaking. So once we get our ducks in a row as far as things that people like now and our direction now, like sky's the limit.
Got a question for you.
Yeah.
Are you able to speak on any events that we can expect this year? I know that you've announced a couple.
Yeah, so we've announced so far that we will be the sponsors of the Squonkapalooza and the Green Eyes Festival. Um,
Okay.
we sent out a notification to players who got their prize packs from New Jersey that we're going to be having a pretty cool tournament in August in Pennsylvania. That tournament, we're going to talk a little bit more about it on Friday, I believe. But that will be an experience as much as it is a tournament. And I think that's something super cool to look forward to. And then there will be some more conventions towards the end of the year that we're going to announce as we go. But we're still kind of booking them further out, giving us like the time right now to focus on the products and the community and some of the lore
Yeah.
and story.
I know that's one of the things that I mentioned in one of my videos previously. I was like, if MetaZoo could give people a little bit more of a heads up, I'm curious how many more people would be able to attend it or would be interested in attending these
Right.
events.
Yeah. So the big like our bigger event this year is going to be in August. So that'll be something that we like formally announce on Friday. But it will be one of our bigger events, and it's going to be something for MetaZoo fans. It's not going to be in a setting that is, you know, not MetaZoo or MetaZoo just trying to fit in. We have our own space, we have our own plans, and it's going to be an experience.
Okay. Uh, are we? Should we expect MetaZoo's presence at Collecticons this year at all?
Not this year. We've thought about it for specific product drops and everything, but we really just feel like doing these smaller cryptid events, like getting into the people that we truly believe would be into our IP.
Hmm.
Um, that just makes more sense for the direction that we're taking. It's Collecticon was really good for getting our name in people's eyes, right? Everybody who is anybody in TCG knows Collecticon and they go to Collecticon. And for the full year of 2025, they saw MetaZoo with a big booth and a giant inflatable and Bigfoot walking around. Like they know we're alive, right? But now it's time to let the people who like Mothman and Bigfoot on the regular to realize that MetaZoo's around. Because a lot of people, at Collecticon, they rediscovered MetaZoo. At big
Hmm.
box stores, they rediscovered MetaZoo. But not a lot of focus from the community, in my sense or in my eyes, has been put on like the people that are discovering MetaZoo for the first time. And it's a really good time to discover MetaZoo. There's a
Oh,
lot going on. There's a
100%.
lot of cool products that's pretty cheap to get into and play. If you're into cryptids, and that's why you got into MetaZoo, we're going to these cryptid events. So, it'll be experiences for people who like cryptids to go to these events that they've never gone to. There's just like a lot of good things about the discovering of MetaZoo right now.
Nothing but opportunity, like building communities. And I mean, if you just put out the content, like you say, you watch a lot of the content that's put out. So there's a good chance that you might
Yeah,
see it
man.
and people's opinion might actually get through.
Yeah, I'm still seeing new videos of people picking up MetaZoo every day, new and old. And I think that's awesome. I think that anytime somebody discovers MetaZoo, it's awesome because, the things that MetaZoo has brought into my life have been incredible. So if anyone even gets, a taste of what that feels like come on in, come on either side, like just find MetaZoo and fall in love with MetaZoo.
Do you have any positives or negatives to say about the Collecticons of 2025?
Positives. It was just a great time all around. I made some lifelong friends. The MetaZoo News guys, those are like some of my best friends now. I talk to them pretty much every day too. Um, and
Shout
Gem at
out.
Pokemon who ran the events, like they were all just like really cool people. I got to like experience stuff that I never thought I would, you know. And I think that the only negatives maybe my feet hurt. Like it was just a lot of standing, but even then, like no man, like it was such a fun time. Like even the hard work of like unpacking and loading and setting up, like that light banner is not easy to set up. That took a team to set that
Really?
thing up. And the more yeah, and the more shows we did, like the harder it was to put up. Like, but that thing it lasted us the year, right? Um, but yeah, like everything about it was just such a fun experience, and it felt so much like that year of 2023 when I was just traveling and having fun with my friends. Everything about it was just an awesome experience.
Matt,
Yeah, literally, like the only negatives would just be that my feet hurt.
all the driving too, I'd say. I know, like you said, you was driving around all that stuff. That had to be a
It
lot,
was it
man.
was a lot of driving, but even then, I'm pretty good on drives, right? When I was in the Navy, I lived in California, my family was in Ohio, and there were times where I would like drive home for like if I had 5 days off, I would drive home in like 30 hours straight, and then I would sleep for a day, spend a day and a half, and then drive back, right? Like driving doesn't like super bother me just because I'm able to like put on music or put on a podcast and just kind of zone out until I need gas. But I also like I really enjoyed the drives this time because there were some places, I've been to the West Coast and back a whole bunch of times, but I haven't really experienced or like traveled through the east side of America at all. So I got to see a bunch of cool places. I found like, some cool places that are on the cards that I was able to like take some cool snapshots,
That's
like the
cool.
Cumberland Gap, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I
it
I
was
just
nice.
I just worry about like vehicle issues. I wouldn't want to break down in the middle of nowhere. That's happened to me before, dude.
Yeah,
It sucks.
yeah, I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and I never. There were definitely a couple times where I was like, man, I hope this thing's gonna make it,
Mm-hmm.
especially like going up and down all those hills and everything.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
we called it Lady Luck because it always made it there.
um, have you ever opened an alt box?
I have. I hit a jet box, and then I hit a. I only got like I think between me and my dad like 2 cases of Secret Shadows, but we did hit the Tyler Ellis box, which I can show you here.
That's
Yeah.
nice. It's kind of like a fallen moth.
I think this is my favorite alt box so far, and I was like really partial to the poncho box. Like one because it had like the sentimental value to it of me pulling it, and then at the next convention I got like the first signed of the 4 promos, and then I got the first four of the jet. So like I had a lot of attachment to the other alt boxes, but there's something about the colors on the Tyler Ellis box that I'm like, I think that's the prettiest one.
It's super cool. I really like it. I can't wait to get one.
Right.
Ha- So have you guys picked up any new artists?
So, I mean, technically, yeah, right? Like if you've looked through from base set to now, we've had like 70 something different artists, which is really cool, having the different artistic expressions of all these characters. Something that I almost use as a talking point a lot, but I don't think people like really think about a lot is that the new MetaZoo has given like some of our favorite characters from the old ones or from the old MetaZoo that were just like, very simple. Like I love them, but they were very simple pieces. The new MetaZoo has brought them into like some of the craziest lights I've ever seen. Like some of the most developed and cool versions of these characters that I never even thought would exist, right? Because they were so outside of like the bounds of what old MetaZoo was. But now when you see like that Grim Reaper with the texture and the gloss on the blade, like
I love
it's
that.
not a watercolor Grim Reaper, but that thing's sick,
No, I love on the location it says your doorstep.
right? I
Who's
think
in charge of
Boogeyman says
that?
under your bed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it- all that stuff, it's actually pretty cool. It is pretty much like a team effort. Like I've been able to help with some of the flavor text, and we do a bunch of different reviews where we go over all the locations and
Nice.
the card text and everything. That's like one of the coolest parts of the job.
What do you think about blacklight cards?
I can see this in a couple cool ways, right? Like one of them is like a card that looks normal, but then you put the black light on it and you see something with the art that looks cool,
That'd be
or
cool.
one that, right? Like, and I think that, like, was it you that showed off like what like a skeleton thing would look cool, or like, was it Smokey the Bear? I think, where it was
I
like a skeletal version.
I've got a skookum that Lily did.
That's what it, yeah, that's what it is. And I think something like that would be cool, where if like you shined a black light over it and it had like their skeleton underneath. And that's actually
Oh
something
my.
where and we'll find out more in the lore, but the anatomy of a caster like actually matters, and the anatomy of a cryptid actually matters, because a lot of it has to do with where they store their aura and how their aura affects them. And like I said, we'll dive like super into that in the lore. But I think something like that would be super cool because say you did have like a caster card like that, you might be able to see like where their aura is stored.
I like that thought, dude. If you guys could pull that
That'd
off,
be
I think there's a lot of people that'd be like rooting for that.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I don't know the full like limitations of what we can do, but something that's fun about the whole team at MetaZoo is that we all just have the passion for what's cool and what's exciting. So if there are things
Absolutely.
that we want to explore, we definitely see what options we have. I don't know if we can do glow in the dark boxes, but I've seen enough people ask about it that, why not look into it?
How hard is it to get textures on trading cards?
I don't. Obviously, I think it's like a printer capability thing. I haven't seen a lot of the smaller TCGs do it. The only people that I see with texture again are like same people with online clients, right? They're just like big IPs. You like Lorcana is Disney, they have texture. Star Wars has texture because it's Star Wars. All of the Bandai games seem to have some sort of texture or UV. So it seems like at the highest level, the printers are able to do it. But in terms of doing it, what I assume and what I've been able to see is that it is just separate print layers with different print materials, right? So in the same way that I was telling you, we do the hollows, where there's like a scale of gray to black, and you have to like make what's hollow, what's not hollow. The
Yeah.
texture is the same way. It's another layer where they're going to print a different material on that card.
So, do you feel like the team is starting to get their legs under them? You feel like they're starting to get an idea as to what the community likes, what they're asking for?
Yeah, man. I really think that every step of the way they've looked at what the community is asking for, what the community wants. We got a lot of hate for and I would say a lot of hate, but there were some people who hated on the legend rares in Secret Shadows, right? Because they're casters.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the first things that we had asked, I think it was in like a MetaZoo hour, like early on, was like how people would feel about like full art casters or full art, more deck bling. So we did it, and then people were like, "Boo!" But we are constantly like looking at things like that the community are asking for and that we can implement. So a lot of the future product has the changes that we see the most ask for in the community. But we have like a good team that is constantly monitoring everything that we can to see like what the community actually like likes and wants. And just passionate people. Like the team really just loves MetaZoo. And I think now more than ever, the team like really knows like what MetaZoo is and what makes MetaZoo MetaZoo. And a lot of the directional that a lot of the directional shifts that we'll be making or the directions that we will be going will reflect that.
So yokai is coming up, like we talked
Yeah.
about earlier. Is there any new rarities in yokai?
So I guess you wouldn't call them rarities, but there are different subsets in it, right? Like we've shown a couple few of them, where we have like the Neo Tokyo and there's a few different ones that all have different iconography on them. They different have different symbols. They have different text on them, different treatment patterns. But it makes it a product that there's a lot to collect within it. And I think that's really cool.
I I gotta say, it seems like the art is kind of like an extended art. Like there's no text boxes or something.
Yeah, so because it is reserve collection, right? And a lot of people asked, "What is a reserve collection?" or like reserve list, what? But I try to make it very clear. Reserve just means it's a specialized set. So it's this is a yokai set. So a lot of the specialties in it are attributed to Japanese culture and Japanese styles. Although all the creatures aren't yokai themselves, like we've shown Cumberland Dragon and Mothman, and Griddle Greaser Pete, right? But a lot of that ties into just the MetaZoo world and trying to keep the MetaZoo characters in that world and showing that although we may be in Japan, that doesn't mean that like Caster didn't map his Griddle Greaser Pete and they're out there cooking noodles, right? Like that's the magic of MetaZoo, is that magic is real, magic is everywhere. So we are introducing like some really cool yokai and everything in some really cool styles, but also keeping it true to what MetaZoo is.
Should we expect a new holotype with yokai or
I actually don't know specifically. I know that we have some cool stuff in it and some cool collectability to it, but I don't necessarily know if there's any new hollow treatments. I'll ask.
when it comes to selecting the holotype, how does that work? Do you guys have to send in a file with like custom, like how you want it, or do they send you like a sample book or?
It depends, right? If you want something custom, and this is something that I experienced with the last TCG I worked on, right? If you want a custom foiling, almost every printer has the capability to do that. But the most standard practice is that they have ones to select from, and that's just for standard foiling. And a lot of that selection just comes from what looks good with your art, what looks good with your style. If you're doing a full art card, do you want it to have the swirls over your text, or do you want them to only be under the text, or do you want swirls at all? Stuff like that. But as far as texture, that's its own unique design. So each texture, there might be some that have like a similar pattern to them, but they're all made to fit the art specifically. So
Do you know if it costs more to make textured cards or not?
I don't know, but I would assume, right? Because it's more materials.
Yeah, and just like the whole process.
Yeah, well, I assume that there would be cost increase just based on the machines that have to be used, right? Because a normal print and gloss machine doesn't have to do the unique texture pattern
What?
printing.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Um,
Yeah.
do you know at what point the texture hits the card? Is it like whenever it's an uncut sheet, or are they cut up into individual cards before they're textured? Or
I believe they're textured on the sheet because I'm not 100% positive, but I know that for the test prints for base set, when I saw that sheet, I do believe that they were textured on there.
that'd be cool to see.
Yeah, I
That'd be
agree.
really cool to see.
That's something we talked about, is showing off some of this cool stuff, right? So one of the projects that we're working on right now is cataloging all of the original art, and that's old and new, right? So that we can eventually have an online museum of MetaZoo art and really like show everybody like how much the styles have evolved, how much the characters have evolved. Maybe look at some stuff that never got released. But yeah, we take true care in that kind of stuff. But I would love to show it off. I think I had talked about whenever we do get back to a Comic Con, right, having a cool display that has the original art for Piazza Bird next to the new art for Piazza Bird, and has like an uncut sample sheet of the old game and the new game, right, and like really showing like the path that MetaZoo has come, as well as some of the early test prints for the new MetaZoo. Maybe show off the red box, stuff like that.
The red
But I really think that
box.
the red box, I think that would be the kind of stuff that people would really want to see in that kind of setting.
When you say red box, you're talking about the base set box that got canceled.
Yeah, the one that got changed to the purple box. Yeah.
Do you know any details as to like what happened there?
No, I just
No.
know that it got changed. It all happened before me. I came onto the project maybe 2 months or 3 months after the base set launch. And then when I first came on, I was just socials, right? And at that time, they already had a social cadence. They already had things that they wanted me to make based on their schedules, and then we had the Collecticon series. So I didn't really get involved into the back end on things for the first couple months until I got my shoes on and made sure that all the socials were good.
Do you have any updates on how people can acquire the prize packs?
Nothing that I can give you specifically here, but we are going to be talking about it on the MetaZoo Hour or during the MetaZoo Hour this Friday, which will be April 3rd, I believe, first Friday of the month.
We'll have it. We'll have it right here. All right. So you've played a fair amount of MetaZoo, old MetaZoo and new MetaZoo. From a non-biased standpoint, would you say new MetaZoo or old MetaZoo is more fun?
So I think fun is subjective, right? But to me, fun is like competition and the ability for my strategy to, overcome my opponent's strategy and win. Um, like I don't hate RNG, like I don't hate randomness in games, but it definitely adds like a level of this sucks. There was countless games in the old MetaZoo where I either won or lost on a dice roll. That doesn't feel very strategic,
I hear
but
you.
it's still fun. So to me, the new MetaZoo is so much more fun just because there is no randomness to it. It really is just strategy. Like half the games feel like you're playing chess, and when you're really playing against somebody who knows what they're doing, the games go so fast. You really have to like make moves that count 3 moves from now. But I really, really enjoy the game of the new MetaZoo, and I loved the old game. I love the old game. I think it's fun. I still have my deck that I play on webcam with every now and then. But new MetaZoo to me is just so much more fun because it's just not random. And there's still fun that can be added to it in terms of randomness. Like we did the event decks for the holiday party, and I think things like that are like the perfect way to have different formats for this game. That if you want that randomness to it, that's the way to do it.
Speaking of the holiday event prototype cards that you're talking about, those kind of had like a unique custom back on them.
They did, yeah. I don't have mine on them or on me right now, but they had like a candy cane back, and they said prototype event deck. Yeah, that was just our tester because we knew we were gonna have like a decent turnout of people that were gonna come and play, and that it was just in the spirit of MetaZoo, right?
Right. It looks really good, and I kind of like that you guys did it. Is that something that we should be looking forward to it or looking for in the future? Is custom backs, like more unique MetaZoo backs, or are they gonna stick with the
Um,
rainbow?
I think that the card back itself will always stay the same. That way, you can always play the cards, unless there were some like gigantic directional shift, which I can't foresee. I imagine the card back will stay the same. But for things that are secondary, like the event deck, like if we ever were to do something like that,
Hmm.
it makes sense to have a different back on it. In the same way that you're playing Monopoly and you have the community chest cards and stuff like that. So I think the standard back will stay just for competitive.
For somebody like me that hasn't really played a whole lot of the new MetaZoo, I probably have about about six, 7 games under my belt. um, how many or what aura type would you recommend a deck I should build? Like what type of deck should I build, or what caster should I use? Coming from someone that
You know,
has a lot of experience.
I think that Earth is the most versatile, and I might be biased because I like Earth the most, but I think that Earth has the ability to play any type, right? You can be an aggro deck, you can be a ramp deck, you can be a control deck, you can be a deck that has a ton of removal with duels and all the air cards. So Earth can pair with water or air. I play it with water and play like a pretty control heavy deck with like big cards at the end. But Earth to me is like the most versatile and it's the easiest to get into. Whenever we would teach at conventions, we would use the Earth alpha deck and the Fire alpha deck because those two were, the most straightforward in terms of the abilities and learning the game.
Okay. Uh, what's your favorite deck to use right now, if you don't mind me
Right
asking?
now, yeah, no, dude. Right now, I play Brigette. Might be Bridget. I don't know how to pronounce it. But I play her. I play Earth Water, and my whole strategy is tapping a whole bunch of stuff on my opponent's side while ramping my aura and playing big creatures, and then I try to fill up their lanes with tokens. It's really like unique, but it's fun.
Do you enjoy playing dark?
I do. I haven't played enough dark. I really want to like play some more. I know I want to make like an Injured Cold deck and play mono dark. But I've played against a lot of dark and a lot of like dark splash decks, and I think it's really good. The hex counters are really good.
Yeah. You ever think we'll see a physical rule book?
Maybe, right? I've seen a couple people ask for it. It does seem to be like the standard now that everyone kind of goes to that. Like I think TMX mentioned this on your last podcast. That everyone just does the QR code and has the online rule book, and that really does have to do with the fact that it's a lot easier to keep updating an online rule book. Anytime there's something new that comes out, you don't have to print another copy. But I could see if we did a product like a spell book someday, it'd be cool to have a little rule book in there.
Whenever you're trying to make a product happen, how far ahead do you guys usually have to plan?
I guess it depends on the product, right? Like a set in itself probably takes a few months, if not a lot of months. And I'm not really on the full development side to see like the true timeframes on that. But even just figuring out one card, um, it takes the time of getting the art done. It takes the time of the graphic design, and then it takes the time of printing. So we generally plan things months ahead.
Speaking of the art, is there a specific way that the team goes about like selecting rarities?
Um, I think it just depends on gameplay and like set needs, right? Like to make it like a balanced set, you need to have so many things. But I'm not super on that side. I've been more involved in the promos and picking those and rarities and stuff. But a lot of it just has to do with the set needs.
I got you. Is there anything that you could talk about publicly that the team has up their sleeve to stick out from other trading card games going forward?
The big thing for me is that I think MetaZoo already does, right? It's a completely unique IP. It has super recognizable characters. Everybody knows Pikachu, but everyone knows Bigfoot, right? And we have the ability to be our own thing and not have to be like something else. And I think that's what makes MetaZoo so unique already. Even our blisters in themselves, like they don't look like other games. The characters definitely don't look like other games. And I think
Without
it
a
just has
doubt.
like that great. Right, and I think again, being at all of these events, like the Squonkapalooza, and the Green Eyes Festival, like these small town events that have big town energy, I think that we really are able to like establish a really like cool core audience of like-minded people, um, and that's what sets MetaZoo apart.
I got a question for you, dude.
Yeah,
So, you guys have given the community an opportunity to vote on the first sleeves that you guys are going to put out, yeah?
yeah, yeah.
How, if a person like me wanted to go vote on which sleeves I wanted to, be the first sleeves that MetaZoo puts out, how would someone go
Right.
about that?
Yeah, so our Discord, right? The MetaZoo TCG Discord. I think it's just discord.gg/MetaZoo TCG. We do most of our community interaction there. We also do a good amount on the Instagram, but the Discord is really like the central place for MetaZoo if you want to talk to the team or ask questions or make suggestions or just find other fans of MetaZoo.
Okay. I, a big question.
Yeah,
You're an OG collector.
I am.
You remember whenever they was talking about the vending machines?
I do, yeah.
Do you think we'll ever see a MetaZoo vending machine?
Well, so interestingly, there is one already. There
What?
is, I think it's a third party company, but in Seattle, like near GQL, there is a vending machine that has like a giant screen on the side and it plays like, the hidden rare Mothman perching, or it plays like the Piazza, and it has a touch screen. And I've gone there. Like when we were at Card Party, I went there and I bought MetaZoo packs from the vending machine, and it was like one of the coolest things.
That's crazy. I'd love to see that in person.
Yeah,
I really would.
it's worth the trip. Hopefully someday there's a bunch of those everywhere, right? But there is one right now, and it's pretty cool.
It kind of reminds me of like MetaZoo at an arcade with like
Yeah,
prizes. That'd be cool, dude.
right.
That would be
I
cool.
agree. My like personal dream is that someday we have something that we can do with all those coins, because I know I have like a box of coins somewhere of the old MetaZoo blister coins. I'd love to be able to use those for something.
Yeah. I- Is there any update on the children's book?
So the children's book is something that we love and we are like super tied to doing it, but we have been super focused on the core product and delivering physical product that is the core product, getting the game out there, having events. There will be a time for us to release that, It's just not yet.
During one of the recent MetaZoo hours, people was asking to see another page of the comic. Do you think we'll get to see that?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have some really cool stuff this Friday actually to talk about the lore.
Okay.
The lore is something that to me is like really important, right? The story of MetaZoo being told in a magical way is really important, and we've been putting a lot in behind the scenes, a new
100%.
way to tell the lore and show the lore and get people really like involved in the lore, right? Like really feeling like you are a caster, and what does that mean, right? What is a caster? Those are all the things that we're going to be exploring in this comic, and then this comic is going to be a part of a series of comics, and we just have so much cool stuff in terms of the lore, and that will tie into the website. We're going to have an update on the website, so the lore section of the website will get a pretty good update with a lot more information about the world of MetaZoo.
With the comics, is that going to be physical comics or on the website?
So right now, our focus is just the website comic, right? But we've talked about a physical version of it someday, right? Maybe after a couple issues, maybe we do a special thing where we print all of them or something. But right now, the main focus is online releases. That way, we can just tell the story.
That'd be cool. I know there was a lot of people that was rooting for the comics. I never really was a comic
Yeah,
collector, but the first magazine, I guess you'd call it, with the Sun Wukong,
yeah,
super clean.
those, those are pretty cool. And I know a guy who has a graded copy. It's like a 9.8 graded copy of the MetaZoo magazine. It looks really cool, big slab.
That's crazy. How did you even get the opportunity to become a MetaZoo employee?
It's an interesting story. I After the launch, right? I went to the launch of MetaZoo. Had such a great time. Just was really feeling the magic, and I was invited out to dinner by someone who, to me, like one of the most important people in my life, invited me out to dinner. Um, and he had like this really like heart to heart conversation with me over pizza, and was like, dude, where you are right now is not where you should be. Like he saw my passion for MetaZoo and saw like we were already doing the TTS mod and already getting back into the content. And he was like, let me introduce you to Charlie and like let me see, because he had some pull. Like let me see what I can do. And the next day, like introduced me to Charlie, or maybe it might have been at the next show. He introduced me to Charlie, and I had like brought my resume, like just in case, like I had an opportunity there. And I totally chickened out, totally just like shook his hand, said hi, hung out with Charlie, ripped
Uh,
packs for a while, and just did not ever ask. And then like as I was leaving the next day, I asked the person who had introduced me, I was like, can you give him my resume? And he put in the good word for me, and I was able to get an interview, and then I started pretty quickly.
What was your first day like?
I don't want to say hectic because it was a lot, but I was just so excited, right? Like I had been in a team setting working on a trading card game before, but this was totally different. Um, I had worked with like peers essentially, like people who were like just normal people like me. I hadn't worked with like
Yeah,
industry veterans and people who do this like on a much bigger scale. And at the time, it was just content, right? Just following the content cadence, making stuff that looked like what had been produced so far. But even just like the first time that I got like to see a part of an upcoming set, I was like, this is awesome.
this is awesome.
um,
He's like, I'm in.
yeah, and literally like every day, there's like the saying where if you love what you do, you don't work a day, and I literally feel that. I just love every part about it.
You're the person that makes the like animated shorts with the like the hidden rare Mothman that moves around and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I do all that stuff, all of like the card animations, anything that goes on the Instagram I make, unless it's like a collaborative post with somebody else.
it's not easy doing things like that. That is time consuming.
It is, but what's cool is like the skills that I've been able to learn already in such a short time. I did socials for the other card game I was working on, and the stuff there looks like a child did it compared to my stuff now. I've really been able to like hone in on my skills, make things look cool, learn things that I never thought I would have in that graphic design space, and it's
Respect,
really translated into a lot of cool stuff. Yeah,
dude. I
thank you.
got I got mad respect. I know that stuff isn't easy. It's so time consuming. Like
Right.
actually putting in the effort to learn all that.
It is. It was a lot of watching YouTube videos and a lot of online courses to really like learn the specifics of all the programs.
It is your job more difficult than you expected.
Some days, right? Some days when there are a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, coordinating with a lot of people. Um, and especially when I was also doing the events. I'm going to be traveling to all the events this year, but they're a lot more spaced out, right? We were doing like 2 Collecticons a month. So with the Collecticon season, I definitely was working pretty hard because I was going like every
That's a
other
lot.
weekend. I was running the booth or helping run the booth and doing the content. And then I would get home, or even just like on the weekends, go back to the hotel and start editing the videos. And then I still had like the weekly content that had to get pushed out. It was a lot for that period of time. But even then, like I slept well every night, just knowing that I was doing what I loved.
If you had to pick your top 3 favorite MetaZoo cards right now, what would you say it is? For art and
Okay.
gameplay.
Okay, cool. So for art, number one right now, Oliver Hamlin. It's maybe tied between his Black Cat and his Plague Doctor. There's something about his style that it's just bananas. And what's even crazier, all of his art is physically done. So like I've seen like his physical artwork, and it looks digital. It looks so good for being just like this little painted thing. So those are probably my number one. Number two for art is probably the alt art trample. I really like that. I think it's just like a fun art, and Trample's like one of my favorite cards for gameplay as well. But the art on it's fun. Like I have a pristine CGC 10 Trample and a PSA 10 because it's the one I really like.
I got stomped by that
Um,
card twice, bro.
yeah, it's a good card.
It is.
And then yeah, dude. Third favorite art, um, I think it might be Spring Heeled Jack by Fran Lobato.
Mm.
I think that there's something about that card that is just so Fran. Fran's style is so unique, and I love his style so much that every time I see that card, obviously it is his card, but like I think like that's Fran. And then when I see something that looks like it, his art's so good that it has that recognition. And it's like, oh, that's a Fran piece.
Fr-
So probably that one.
Frayne is a goat. He made the Oni and Yokai. I can't wait to see what else he has up his sleeve for that set. I know
He's that's
you teased one of his cards
yeah,
that he has
yeah.
coming up. I can't wait.
He has a couple really cool ones. And he's involved in some of the other stuff we're doing too. So you're gonna see a lot of cool Fran stuff coming out this year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I like the art that's on the Yokai box. Like the
Yeah.
Nekomata.
Yeah, the Kate Becker Nekomata.
Is that official?
Yeah, so right now I believe so, right? I know that we'd gone through like a couple different ideas for that packaging. Originally there was a kitsune that I really liked, but it
That
made
would
more
have been cool.
sense in the Nekom. Yeah, it looked really cool, but the Nekomata is so good, and it's that big long piece that we've shown. And somebody figured out that it's a 3-part art similar to the Hidden Rare Frogman and Loch Ness Monster. So there's 3 really cool arts that Kate Becker did as an extended one that people will be able to put across their binder.
We're gonna get more connecting cards.
Oh yeah,
Confirmed.
yeah, yeah. I love that. I know people love that.
You think we'll ever see an online store on MetaZoo's website?
Maybe I think that something that sets MetaZoo apart right now is our access to all of our distributors. Or, a lot of these newer games, the only stores that sell them are the ones that are pretty close in location to the creation of that game. We are very fortunate. Not only do we have big box, but we also have distribution. So game stores are able to purchase our product, and that's obviously like the best place that you want to get MetaZoo cards is your game store. And get your game store, get a group playing, and support that. But it's not off the table, right? Direct to consumer someday would be pretty awesome.
And that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a set, base set, Torrential Tides, or Secret Shadows, which one would you say is your favorite set?
That's tough, man. Base set like has so many memories already, right? It's only been a year, but it's such like already a nostalgic set just for the memories around its release, right?
For
Like,
sure.
but if I had to pick a favorite, and a lot of it has to be based on the art and the gameplay, it's got to be Secret Shadows. Secret Shadows has some of the coolest arts that even like some of the rares have like really cool art. Has like some of the best alt art, some of the best hidden rares. Like I'm a huge fan of how they did the hidden rares and the legend rares. Like I love the legend rares. Like I think they're super cool.
I would have loved to have seen a Bloody Mary textured.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna say
that'd
this
be
for
cool.
MetaZoo Boca, the Headless Annie with like the Torrential Tides white legend
Yeah,
rare.
that'd be cool.
He's right about that. That would look so clean.
That'd be cool.
Halloween card.
Yeah, we're exploring a lot more of the holiday stuff. I think
Really?
people will be happy. Yeah, we've talked about how we're going to be having like various promos coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Oh,
part of the spirit of keeping everything alive, right? Um, having connections to all these different events and connecting MetaZoo to all of these different world events is always going to be something that's important.
leaning towards the holidays is really what got me into MetaZoo. And the Santa
Yeah,
stuff,
man.
Valentine's Day, I love it. I'm glad
Yeah,
to hear. I'm glad to hear that we're going to be leaning more towards that.
yeah, man. They don't have to be full sets for them to be, a memorable MetaZoo experience that is tied to a holiday. Like even like I remember like the 4th of July card was like a really good card, and it was 4th of
Mm-hmm.
July. Like I always loved how MetaZoo was able to tie to weird random world events and holidays, and yeah, I think that's something we're gonna look into.
And then how fast they came out with the disclosure with
Disclosure was really cool.
with like the little
Yeah,
alien body laying there that
yeah, that
you
like
know.
just got released.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. I was hoping that they would have done like the 8 foot tall aliens in Miami or whatever. I thought that would have been cool.
Men in Black knocking at their door.
Exactly.
Is there any updates coming to the MetaZoo website that you can discuss? I know that Charlie had some frustrations not being able to update things as quick as he really wanted.
I mean, I think it's just going to get like an overhaul altogether, right? There's a lot of systems that we wish were developed a little better, and we're going to do that, right? And like I talked about the lore section, it's going to have a lot more interactivity. I think that we just want to make the website more of an experience, right? A place where you can like really get to know MetaZoo as well as the product. Right now everything's kind of spaced out. It'd be nice to have it all together.
So you say like overhaul on the website, like overhaul, or just, a couple upgrades here and there?
I think a little bit of both. I think that there will be some like a lot of visual changes. A lot of stuff will stay, right? I think that's just going to be cleaned up.
Okay, more refined.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Um, the Bigfoot plushie.
Yeah,
It, it, are you able to like give us any updates on that?
yeah. So they're in production, uh, about a month production time, and then we have to wait for them to get shipped to us and everything. But I do have, I can show you. I have the sample right here. This little guy.
Just
This is
conveniently right there. He said, "I know what I'm gonna do with this."
this guy is awesome. They did a really good job. We're very excited. They're not going to be numbered. I know a lot of people have asked about that, but they are going to be the first MetaZoo plushie, and we've been coming up with a lot of really cool designs for different ones that we want to do. Some are going to be tied to events, some are going to be tied to specific drops. But yeah, I'm very excited about the plushies. I'm a plushie guy, and it does have a keychain, which I think is cool if people want to like hang it from the backpack,
It's perfect.
right?
There's been so many people rooting to see the OG Bigfoot, and that's for everyone. I mean,
Yeah.
that right there shows that MetaZoo listens,
Exactly. Yeah.
without a doubt.
Yeah. I'm obviously partial to the old Bigfoot because that's what I grew up with. But I love Bigfoot just in general, and I'm very excited that we got to use the old design for this one. And like we have the mascot as well, so OG Bigfoot
Yeah.
will stay around in the zoo.
Should we expect the Bigfoot plushies at Big Box?
No, I don't think so. I think that these will be something that we distribute either directly to the community or through events.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Do you know if binders are in the works?
Uh, you know, Early stages of planning, like the same way that the sleeves are right now. We come up with a bunch of designs. Obviously with the sleeves we let the community vote, but there is like internal discussion on how these things should be made and how they should be distributed before we announce plans on them. But we've talked about a variety of smaller products like that. Sleeves are just a start. In my brain, I think something that makes sense we could do, maybe like a base set binder, a tides binder, and a shadows binder. At least start with the basics, right? Start for a place for people to put their cards.
For
But we're still in
sure.
early discussions on them.
For sure. Yeah, maybe with like the booster box artwork just on the binder.
Right?
Something simple. I mean, or the alt box
That'd
on
be
the
cool.
binder. That'd be really cool, dude. I know people would want
Contra
that for
box
sure.
binder would be cool.
For the people that can't afford the alt boxes, Get the alt
Yeah.
binders.
Yeah, and that's what I liked. We did the art prints too. Like if you look behind my poncho box over there, that we did like the print of the poncho box, which I thought was cool. So people could
Hmm.
still have that art, and it was the back of the magazine too. So I
Th-
think doing like other media types with that stuff is nice to give people a chance to own that art still.
those prints are serialized too. I've got
Yeah, they
one.
were
I got one of the Mothman prints, and I had Jet put a couple doodles on it, and I'm pretty sure it's
nice.
6, 7 out of 100. You've played quite a few other trading card games, like Yu-Gi-Oh! You mentioned, and a couple others. Why MetaZoo?
Initially it was the quirkiness of it. It was the fact that you had to bring the fourth wall items and you had to scream or you had to cry or you had to, find unique ways to do those things. I played Critters was like my main deck pretty much always. And there was something about the complexity of all those crazy rules that did allow for like a very competitive space to form, and I really enjoyed like finding those niche things. And there's one time when Squonk got changed. Like Squonk, it used to be like this card gains immortal if you're crying, or if your opponent cries, then he dies. But at one point they changed it and they made it so that if you had your fourth wall item as eye drops, that counted. So I remember like knowing that and like seeing the change like the day it happened and being like, oh, this is awesome. I'm gonna go to my locals. No one knows. And I'm gonna bring eye drops and Squonk's just gonna, sweep
Yep,
up the place. And he
yep.
did. But then the next week, everyone had eye drops on their fourth wall, and Squonk just became unplayable. So I think like what drew me to MetaZoo not only was like the quirkiness of it at first, but really like the level of complexity and competition that you could have within that weird world of rules.
I wish I would have got to play more of the old MetaZoo in person and got to see some of
Yeah,
that silliness.
it
Is
was
there?
fun, man.
Yeah, I bet, dude. Is there anything in particular that excites you about the rebuild?
I mean, everything, right? It's back. I think that's like the biggest thing. It's stable. I think that is nice. Nice. It's nice knowing that the people behind it care about it and are, it's in good hands. And then, being on the other side of it, I get really excited about everything that we do because I love MetaZoo so much. And, new MetaZoo is always cool. So I'm just like in a constant state of excitement because all of the things that we're constantly doing. And like I said, we have to plan so far out for a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
we're constantly working on new and exciting things. And that's
Uh,
like the most exciting thing about it.
Speaking of future, is there anything that you could say about 2026 roadmap?
And I have a pretty standard answer when it comes to roadmaps, just in TCG specifically, right? It's hard for us with the amount of things that change, with the time frames, with print schedules, to like give a year-long roadmap, right? But
Yeah,
it's pretty easy for us to give a solid date on something when it's printed and going to the distributors, right? Like that's just been the philosophy of why overextend what we think might happen when there are so many variants that can happen. um, and somebody can make a roadmap with all of the things that we do announce. At the end of the year, that's going to be a pretty solid map of all the things that we've been doing. It's
for
just a
sure.
matter of like if we announce things too far ahead, like specifically in product, like if we announce physical products too far ahead and then we miss that like release date, that it just looks bad. We'd rather just be able to deliver, and when we have the information to deliver, we do.
Is there anything that the team has made, any sets or anything that hasn't made it to the consumers?
I wouldn't know, no sets, but there have been cards. There have been cards that didn't make it into sets and arts that didn't get used. And the unique thing about that is that it gives us the opportunity to use them elsewhere, which is really cool. A cool example is the Green Eyes, right? We showed that Green Eyes art and that Squonk art. Like those are both arts that were unused for another project that we can use specifically for these, and they fit perfect.
Do you think we're going to see cooler promos than the mailbox promos at events this year?
Yes, I do. We'll have some. We've been working really hard on promos. There's going to be a wild variety of promos to collect for MetaZoo.
Okay. I really like the
Yeah,
Christmas Frogman that was put out Christmas last year.
that was pretty cool, right? I like
Going
that, and then that, and that's just a taste of how we can do promos. Promos don't have to just be the Green Eyes Festival promo. It can be a really cool Green Eyes just with the Green Eyes Festival logo on it. It can be a really cool Christmas Frogman because it's the holidays, but it can be distributed at LA Collecticon.
All right, if you had to sell your whole collection and you only got to keep one thing, what would you keep?
That's tough. um, man, it would have to be something sentimental. Okay, so I have two things that are very sentimental to me, right? My first one is my Cleveland staff card. So this was given to the staff of the Cleveland Collecticon, which I'm from the Cleveland area. I got it doodled up and first signed by Lily when we were in Seattle. And that one to me, it was like, it wasn't my first staff card that I got, but it was the first event that I really felt like I was like part of MetaZoo. And it was in Cleveland. I was able to like go home afterwards. But that one is like super memorable to me. But I think realistically, the card that I would keep forever, no matter what, is this one. So this is a light aura that is signed by Doom,
That's a
who
cool
was,
signature.
yeah, dude.
That is cool.
He was the first guy I ever played MetaZoo against, became one of my best friends. And it's just, yeah, it's got more sentimental value than any physical or retail value of anything else that I have. So I'd probably keep that card.
Is there any word on what MetaZoo trophies are going to look like going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, I would love to do physical trophies. Like, I think that's something that we'll probably end up exploring. I love some of the trophies that have, been given out so far. Like, I won the holiday event, and I got the Nova like Bigfoot trophy, and I have
Yep.
that displayed over there, and I love that thing. But I do think that there is value to be had, like sentimental value in having a physical, like real MetaZoo trophy, right? So that's something that I'll look into specifically. But in terms of prize cards, we are doing a series of prize cards for our premier events. So players will be able to come out and get a first place caster trophy.
To speak on that Nova event a little bit, I'm you say you watch the MetaZoo content. I'm sure you've seen,
Yeah,
people were a little bit uh they were criticizing the trophy. Do you have anything to say about, the trophy? What do you think about it?
I love the trophy. Right, it was a community run event. I was just happy to be there. Um, the fact that they even put that event on for MetaZoo, I think, was awesome. Right,
It
because that
was
wasn't
cool.
that wasn't it wasn't us doing that. That was the guys in Northern Virginia who just love MetaZoo, and that guy, like Five Potatoes, made that trophy, and I probably love it more than any trophy I've gotten on anything else in my life, just because it was made with love and it was won with love.
I never really spoke on it too much because I didn't know, all the details. So to clarify, it was
Yeah.
not MetaZoo that hosted the Nova tournament.
No, it was there's like a group of guys who play MetaZoo in Northern Virginia. They call themselves like Nova MetaZoo, and they hosted that event, and it was awesome. It was so fun.
It was a lot of fun. I was
Yeah,
fortunate enough to attend it, and just watching everyone get together and enjoy, the card game that we all love. It was a blessing to
right.
be there.
It was, dude. It was such a good time. I had so much fun. Like, aside from the tournament, like I love playing in tournaments and everything. But even if that was just a gathering and everyone there just like was trading and talking and ripping packs, like that was a good time.
For sure. To change the topic a little bit, I've got a question about uncut sheets.
Yeah.
Is there any floating around?
No, so there's no like excess sheets that are made for any reason. The only reason that there are sheets is test printing.
Okay.
Like the test printing, they test print every card to make sure that every card's good, and then those go through a series of checks and then they're stored. So
You got to show us them sheets, bro.
I would love to do some sort of like MetaZoo museum someday where we really like show off all of the cool stuff that comes along with producing MetaZoo.
100%, dude. I mean, that's the content people like me want to see, you know?
For sure.
Eh,
Everyone loves behind the scene looks,
yeah.
and a lot of stuff, there is complexities to it, but being able to show some of the stuff along the way is really cool.
Once again, you're an OG MetaZoo collector.
Yeah.
You're you remember the content creator medals?
Ooh, yeah, I have one.
Did so you have one. Did that encourage you to make content?
100%, dude. Like all that stuff did, right? I think that was like something that the old MetaZoo was really good at, was getting like the attention of
Hmm.
people to do things.
Yeah,
Like even like I remember coming home from, maybe it was Dark Tower, Flame Tower, and getting like my silver appreciation medal or whatever in the mail, and just feeling like, dang, like
they
all of
seen
this
me.
was worth something, right? Yeah, they've seen me. And like, and I hate to think that like the only reason you would do content would be to get something out of it, but recognition goes a long way, right? And I understand that just from like, working with the content creators and doing spoilers and stuff, and really trying to be involved as much as I can with the people who make MetaZoo content. Just because I understand like truly what it like feels like to make content for what feels like nobody, but what it feels like to get that recognition from the people who make the thing that you like or that you're making content about. But just showing that we actually do care. I think that's super important.
I seen some of the content that you made whenever, like on your YouTube, whenever the new
Yeah,
MetaZoo first came out. Uh, it was gameplay, showing people how to play the
yeah,
game. I
yeah,
loved it, dude. I
yeah.
was
That's
really,
I hopped right back into it because with the old MetaZoo, that's what I did. I was a player first. I collected, but like it was all about the game, like play to me. So I would make videos on like rulebook updates and errata changes and deck builds. And I tried to transfer that into the new MetaZoo as soon as it came out. I was posting the decks I was playing and testing. We were posting like full gameplay matches on webcam and TTS, and just making quick little like gameplay guides and like tips and tricks and stuff. Yeah, I was all in it.
switching up the topic a little bit. You know the torrential tides boxes and the
Yeah,
error that was going on with the torrential tides boxes.
yeah, yeah. I
You kind
do.
of want to like touch on what that error was and the plan going forward with that is,
Yeah.
if
So,
it pops up
well,
again.
for sure, if it pops up again, luckily I think that we've gotten it all straightened out in terms of making the community whole.
Hmm.
We had put out an announcement at the time, like 6 or 7 months ago, that there was a very like finite amount of packs that had been affected with getting base set alts in it. I was never privy or really like given the information as to like how that happened, but I do know that it was fixed, right? Because we haven't had that issue again, and I was glad that we were proactive about it, right? The second that we saw that somebody had made content about it, first we verified, right? You
Hmm.
always got to verify that kind of stuff because it wouldn't be above anyone in this world to fake it, right? You got to verify that it's actually happening, not necessarily just at the product level, but at the printer level, and that's always the easiest way, right? You can go back to that printer and be like, hey, how did this happen? Did this happen? So, as soon as it was verified that it was some sort of error, we immediately made a post, set up an email so that people could, send all of their information in and get replacement product. And that's what we did. We made sure that at least everybody who reached out about having that error was made whole with whatever product they wanted.
I got you. Um, let's say it popped up again. If I got a torrential tides box that had some errors and I contacted you in the Discord, what would
Yep.
be your response?
I would send you new product.
New, uh, uh, as in, like a
Well,
booster
right.
box,
So
couple
it
packs, a new
Well, it depends, right?
random.
So, like, we'll say you bought a pack, right? And your pack of tides had a base set alts in it.
Mhm.
One, I'd be like, well, not a terrible pack, right? You got an alt, but I
True.
understand, right? I'd still send you a box, right? I understand that if it's something that the experience is ruined for somebody, and I understand that that kind of thing can ruin an experience, right? Somebody buys a case of the new set and it doesn't have the new set cards in it. I can see where that would, diminish their experience. So we've been giving people the option, or when it did happen, we gave people the option of whatever product they wanted in replacement. I had sent out Secret Shadows boxes as replacement for Tides boxes that were affected because that's what the customer wanted.
I really appreciate your honesty on that, man. I know that was
Yeah,
pressing a little bit, but
that's all right.
I'm sure that it's a question that the community would have wanted you to answer.
For sure. And I tried to give some clarity around it just in like specifying that it was a certain number of packs and setting up that email account so that people knew that they had an avenue to get replacements. And they did. And if that is something that pops up again, there still is that avenue, which is great.
Good, good. Me and TMX talked about community recommendation tab where you
Yeah.
guys could kind of get like a live market research. Do you think we could ever see something like that?
Yeah, I absolutely think we could. It's something that I think that we would kind of have to strategize a little bit, just because my only fear personally would be that, you know, if somebody has an idea that they think is really good, I wouldn't want the community to hate on them for it, right? Right now we do have a suggestion system that is like a ticket system where it's a closed thing. Like if you have a suggestion, you can get directly to a staff member on the Discord with your suggestion. And we look into it, we take it to heart. We've had plenty of suggestions that way. But in a public forum setting, I see the value in, if somebody has a great idea that everyone likes, then we can see, 100 people think that this is a great idea. Maybe that's something we explore. As long as it's not something that turns into,
T-
negativity towards other
Toxic.
community members. Yeah, that's just because that's like one of the main things we try to avoid with the Discord is negativity within the community.
I, it's good that you point that out to kind of look at it from both
Yeah.
sides, because if I had an idea that I thought was genuinely good and then I posted it and it got like 100 laughing emojis and people just like
Right.
trolling it, that would suck. I'm glad you pointed that
Yeah,
out.
and that's like something super like personal to me is just making sure that no one's experience is diminished by other people. Like, I found MetaZoo when I had no friends in MetaZoo, and I loved it so much that it helped me make other friends. And I don't want somebody coming into MetaZoo that's new getting their experience diminished and not wanting to make that community or make, more friends within it and just walk away because they walked into a place that was so negative.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that 100%. Switching up the topic a little bit, if you could make your own custom hollow, what would
Yeah.
what would you make it look like?
Ooh, that's tough. I think that it would be cool to have a hollow that had like the ore symbols in it. Like I don't know if you saw when we made MetaZoo the Hunt, which was like the ARG online, which was like one of the funnest
Mm-hmm.
things I've ever done for MetaZoo. We had Lily McKay made some custom backgrounds, I believe, and they looked kind of like an arcade floor, but it was the art, it was all the aura symbols, and I think it's still like the wallpaper on some of my stuff. But I think something like that would be cool, like especially if we had like some sort of like rainbow card that had like all the auras and it had like an aura pad in background.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
I would love to see that bit.
wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. What kind of cards do you personally like collecting?
I'm on a kick right now. Um, I've been like getting in on those the Fanatics auctions. And I had never really collected CGC cards before until I saw some cards with the pristine 10 label, and I've been
Black and
collecting
gold.
those.
Black and gold.
Yeah. The black and gold looks really cool with a lot of the cards.
Some of the people are sleeping on the Fanatics auctions. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, man, I've gotten some really good deals on there for slabs. And
I,
I don't spend like frivolously on stuff, but
mm,
it's really nice to be able to get some of those deals and like, have some slabs in my collection that I really like.
say less, dude. I picked up a handful of those. I can't wait to make a video on that. Is there anything you could say about the fourth set beyond the set name? Like if it's gonna be like a more large set?
I can't give too many specifics. We will
Mm-hmm.
talk about it a little bit more in the MetaZoo hours as it comes. And it's also, we don't want to put the cart in front of the horse on it just because yokai is our next physical product, set based. But we're definitely going to dive into set four, and set four is really cool because it's set in a story. It's set in something that's happening in the MetaZoo universe, and we're going to be able to tell that story prior to its launch. So, when that set does come out and we start getting more information about it, it's going to be a familiar thing to the world of MetaZoo.
That's
One thing
interesting.
that I can offer is that it has something really unique for gameplay, and something that will make the game, shift in a way that is fun. And I'm very excited about it.
Is there gonna be a new aura implemented within the yokai set or the fourth set?
No, no. Set yokai and set four are going to remain with the same aura types, but from that initial graphic that we showed off, there's more aura types to explore.
I can't wait to see that.
I know, me
Um,
too. I'm very excited.
a question. Are-
Yeah.
Do you have any idea like how far ahead you guys are right now? Are you able to speak on that? Like, are you guys working on set five, or are you guys trying to focus more on things this year? Or are you able to touch on that at
And
all?
I don't know how much I can touch on it. I just know that I can tell you that we are developing products that are for next year.
Perfect. That okay.
Yeah.
For the people that's doubting, they're
Yeah,
already
message's not going anywhere.
they're cooking up for next year. You previously worked on another TCG, yeah?
I did, yeah. I helped develop Nom Nom Verse.
How difficult is it for a TCG to get into big box? especially within the first year.
Impossible. You have to know somebody or have a ton of money, right? Um, you have to be able to offer the distributors for big box stores, which there aren't a lot, right? I think there's maybe two big ones that everyone knows. Um, to get in front of them with something that seems valuable to them seems almost impossible. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's the same with distributors. There's very few amounts of new TCGs that aren't backed by a big IP or a big company that are able to get distribution, and they have to rely on the direct to consumer sales or the Kickstarter model. And that works for getting stuff off the ground, but for longevity, it's really hard.
I know there's a lot of people that's rooting for something like a spell book to hit the shelves.
Yeah, no, I get it. I like I said, we've talked about like all kinds of smaller products and ways to do them. The yokai set is our first jab at that, right? It's not a spell book, but it is a specialized set with its own product and its own packaging. And it really is just the start of what our capabilities are, and that's at like the high end, right? Like that's in a reserve collection, that's in a premium product. But, applying those same skills to a normal product means that we'll end up with something great.
Have you announced how many packs is going to be in the yokai box or how many cards is going to be in each pack?
I would have to look at the graphic again
Okay.
because I think the packs say how many cards are in the pack, but I don't think that we've announced how many packs are in the box
All right.
or the
Just
contents of the box.
trying to clarify.
For sure. When we have all that product information, like specifically, and that all comes along with the next stages of production, which are the printing and everything. So once we have those numbers hammered out, in terms of like what's going to be in the box, we'll let everybody know.
Um Not only is MetaZoo in big box now, but it's like international, right?
Yeah, that was something that we were like very fortunate to have off the rip, and something that old MetaZoo didn't have. A lot of other TCGs don't have. And another thing that I personally think sets MetaZoo apart is that it's had growth in other countries. There was PAX Australia that had a whole MetaZoo booth set up with learn to plays and convention promos. Like, it's really cool to see MetaZoo being an international thing, because I think that's like something that it should have always been. It was a game that was based on all of these cryptids, and although there was like the Cryptid Nation, they had the ambassador promos and everything. And I remember like hunting down Manaya, which was like the New Zealand ambassador promo, so that I could use it for the water tower and stuff. So I think that like having those region specific things are so cool and what makes MetaZoo thrive. And yeah, we had play groups in a whole bunch of different countries, and people, there's a guy who went to Japan and found it in a store in Japan. Like, it's really cool.
Speaking of the ambassador promos, those were kind of like per region, yeah? Like different locations, you'd
Yeah,
get different ambassador
yeah, and
promos?
not all of them were released. Only if like a handful of, I think only maybe two of them were released. The barbecue Sam, which was the USA promo, and then the Manile and the Drop Bear, which was the Australia. So those three, but there were a ton of other ones, and that's I've been excited on this side of MetaZoo because some of those characters we've been able to use and show life to, because they didn't get into people's hands prior, like the Loch Ness Monster and the Djinn.
Yeah.
Those are characters that like only existed on those ambassador cards that people like didn't even know if they existed until the very end, and we were able to bring them into our core sets.
I didn't even know old MetaZoo made a Jin card. Jin.
Yeah, yeah, it's
It
one of
looks
the
weird.
ambassador promos.
It looks
It
weird.
looks very weird. I really like our direction on Jin.
Yeah, yeah, the way that the new zoo has done it has been way better.
Yeah, and there's like actually like really like deep lore with the Jin that we'll get to explore. That's really exciting.
Whenever I know you watch the YouTube content, whenever you hear
Yeah.
people, MetaZoo gets quite a bit of backlash. How do you handle that?
All right, so realistically, and this comes in the forms of criticism, it comes in the forms of videos, it comes in every form, Discord messages, everything, right? I understand that there are a lot of people who are inherently negative about MetaZoo's current direction because of its old direction. I understand, I was one of the people who had my heart and my wallet tied to MetaZoo. I was spending all of my time buying and playing MetaZoo more than anything else. But I am so thankful that it is where it is now and that it exists. That it's not something that like we have to keep alive anymore. as the community, you know, like it is alive, and we give it life in the sense of like longevity, but it's almost like we were given a second chance at this like awesome thing. And I just, you know, every time that someone is super negative or, you know, super like passive aggressive, I just, you know, I remember how I felt at like my saddest moments when MetaZoo was shutting down, and how I felt, like, you know, like betrayed and all that stuff. And I always try to leave a door open for those people, because when they are able to realize that MetaZoo is going to live for a long time and that people are enjoying it and that there is a community for them still, you know, that I find fulfillment in that. I find fulfillment in every time that somebody who was like a super hater comes back and is like, okay, that's pretty cool. And it's like, you know, because it's still MetaZoo, and there's still a place for everyone who loves MetaZoo to love MetaZoo.
You've been working with the MetaZoo team for going on about a year now, yeah.
About a year, yeah.
What you think about them, bro?
They're great. You know, like on both sides. You know, I don't interact with the others, like the publisher side, as much, but
Mm-hmm.
every time I have, they've been a treat. You know, everyone has been so nice to me, especially like as the new guy and as somebody who, you know, doesn't come from a crazy background like a lot of them. You know, they've all been like very welcoming, and very just nice to me. And you know, I've been given a lot of trust and a lot of opportunities that I never thought I would have.
That's cool, dude. I could only
Yeah.
imagine what it's like to, just me going from doing this to, hey, you're working for MetaZoo. Like, wait, what?
Right.
It's like, oh,
Yeah,
you with the big dogs
dude.
now.
Yeah, man. 2 years ago, I was a fan of card games. And then a year later, I was helping run a card game. And now I get to work on my favorite card game.
That's
And
so cool.
it's just been like the best path ever, especially, you know, after coming out of the Navy and just going to school and not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life and being able to really follow my dream. It's been like the best experience.
I never did get to say thank you for your service, bro.
Oh, thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate
Thank you.
you.
Do you think we'll see a alt box for yokai or the fourth set? Kind of a
uh,
interesting
Not
question
for
for a mini set.
yokai. It is an interesting question. I'm actually not positive on set four. I know not for yokai, but I know with set four that there's going to be some additions to the opening experience that a lot of people have been asking for, and I think that it's going to, you know, really make it a more fun experience to open than a lot of the other sets.
I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
It's gonna be
It
cool, man. And like I said, you know, the big thing about set four is that it's something that is like lore based, and it's something that takes place in the world of MetaZoo, and it's gonna be a fun time over the next couple months. You know, really exploring that story and getting everybody to the point where they understand like what's going on.
Do you think making this set 4 lore based has made it longer to create the set?
Um, no, actually, I think that it helped make the set. You know, a lot of things when you're making a set, and this is just speaking from personal experience. You know, I wasn't directly involved in like the full set making process for set four or anything. But you know, when you make any product that you want to have tied to some sort of connection to your IP, you know, the best way to do that is with a story. You know, is with some sort of setting that makes sense. You know, Seance, Native, all those. You know, they had like a set theme to them, but there was no story. You know, we want to be able to tell the story of the sets, and then that way every time that you look at a card, you know, that card might be a scene from the story that you just read, you know, and you're like, oh, I know what's going on here, I remember when this happened. I think that's so much cooler. Yeah, having like a story tied to the physical product is something that we've been heavily looking into.
Do you think we could see, like, if there was like a comic book or something, like some of the card arts in the comic book, and then it's like, oh crap, I got the card of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd
That's
be
something that
cool.
I've always loved. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome.
Let's go, dude. For new people that's creating content, have you guys discussed anything that you'd like to see from people like me or just like anyone that's brand new to MetaZoo?
You know, we all have like our own unique taste in terms of content, right? Like I love watching gameplay content because I love playing the game. Some people, you know, the artists might like watching the content where people review like what's their favorite art or what was the Easter egg found in the art kind of thing. You know, overall, just more content is always better. You know, we try to consume as much of the content as we can and really get like a feel of how the community is interacting with MetaZoo. So just more content all around is great. Personally, I would love to see more gameplay content. I'm really a big fan of Bunnyman's channel, and Cam P. They do like, full games as well as breakdowns on cards. Um, I personally enjoy MetaZoo Menace's videos when he does like his market videos. I think it's cool to showcase some of the fluctuation in the card prices, you know. Um, and there are like some really cool sales to highlight old and new MetaZoo. Like stuff moving around is still neat. But yeah, just in general, we just love watching zoo content. So more zoo content's always better.
I agree. I stay looking for just like MetaZoo recently uploaded at work.
Right.
Yeah. Is the secondary market that something that you and the team look at, try to pay attention to, like?
Yeah, not really. No, once the cards are out into the world, that's on the world. We're really just primarily focused on making a good product, a good product that people want to consume, and finding good avenues to get that product into people's hands.
I got you. Is there anything that you got to say about the quality moving forward? Do you think, I know that like the base set kind of was a little bit rough. Do you think, I've kind of noticed that it seems like it's getting a little bit better as we go. Do you think it'll well, maybe not consistently get better, but you think it'll get better over time?
Maybe, I think that eventually we'll get to a point where we're like, this is our standard, and we've seen some good changes so far. They changed the borders on the super rares because of scratching. The UV plus texture for the legends and everything has really like improved quality. Corners have seemed better. It does seem like they have gotten into the swing of how to produce these cards in a great way. But a lot of that really is just at the manufacturer level. But what's great, is that we have like a solid QA team in the sense of if a card product, is messed up, they'll reprint it. Like they'll make it right before they ship it out. Like we're not going to send out damaged product or anything.
I've not hardly seen any error cards pop up. I've only seen a handful of them, dude. I've been looking at
I saw
eBay.
one hollow insert. That was it. Which
I
I thought that was cool.
I want them. Do
Yeah.
you guys have like blank hollow fills?
Well, yeah. I mean, on the sheets, technically, yeah. But I've seen somebody pull one out of a box.
All right, bro. This has been a long podcast, and I definitely appreciate you coming on here and answering some questions for myself,
Here, dude.
for myself and the community. You're a goat, bro. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the MetaZoo community?
Specifically, I'm just happy that everyone's here. I would say like thank you to the fans that have stuck around from old to new and the fans that are here just from the new. We really are just getting started. We just finished our first year. But as a true fan of MetaZoo, like from as far back as I was, I've never been more excited in the future of MetaZoo than I am now. So I hope that everyone gives it a chance and sticks around for all the fun things that we're going to be doing this year. And yeah, I'm just really happy.
Me too, dude. Like you said, you guys are already planning for things coming next year, so I'm excited to see what you guys got up your sleeve for this year, especially those convention promos. Those are some of my favorite. But is there anything else you got to say?
I think I'm all good, man. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Magic is real.
Magic is real.
Magic is real. Guys, make sure you go join the MetaZoo Discord. Cast your vote on the first MetaZoo sleeve. When is the due date for that?
I believe that ends this weekend.
This weekend. Guys, get your votes in. I'm going to have the MetaZoo Discord link down below. Make sure you join the Discord. Cast your vote on what sleeve you want the first sleeves to be for MetaZoo. What tab is that in?
That's in the announcements tab.
Announcements tab. Guys, I appreciate you so much. Ben, you're a goat. Thank you so much for, it's an honor to have an official MetaZoo employee on here answering some questions, behind the scenes questions and everything. I'm sure the community is gonna appreciate you. Guys, say thank you, Ben, down in the comments. Join the Discord. I'm gonna have everything linked down below. Leave a like, subscribe. We're going to be doing more podcasts. And yeah, magic is real. Can't wait to see where this goes. And anything else?
I'm good, man.
All right, bro. Just making sure. Guys, love you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace out.